everyone, welcome back to our channel. For today's video, we are going to talk a little bit about Babywise. You could kind of think of this as a Babywise 101. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit subscribe down below and click that bell button to make sure that you get notified when we have new videos. We are always posting new videos twice a week. So you should go ahead and make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video, make sure that you thumbs up anything so that we can interact with you guys, and it really helps our channel.
Today we wanted to share with you what Babywise is and kind of like what it's meant to us and how it's helped us. So first of all, I want to talk about what Babywise is. So Babywise, I think it's like I like to say it's like a program or like a sleep training method or something like that. I know that there are other ones like the Ferber method, and there's like taking care of babies, which I've heard great things about. I've also heard that's similar to Babywise. But we found out about Babywise I found out about my boss before we had Jonah, and then I found out about it, and then we were going through a process of like figuring out sleep and feeding with Jonah, and a friend had recommended it to us. So it's kind of how we came across it, and kind of generally what it is. Sleep training method. Yeah.
Only one of the few, like Darla was talking about, only one of the few methods that you can use when sleep training your baby. It also is one of the few methods that you can use to like kind of structure your day with your baby. Now, this is just our experience with Babywise. We're not saying it's true all the time. And we're not saying it's the only method. I'm sure that there are other methods out there that work, but we found that Babywise really worked for us, and it really benefited Jonah, and therefore benefited us. And
I would say too that we didn't even follow Babywise to the T, especially like as he got older and I just got to know him more, and like got to know his cues, like his sleep cues, his hunger cues, and things like that. We just really took like what worked for us and kind of applied it to the structure of his day, and like took that structure and made it our own.
And just like with any other program or any other video you watch on a program, my personal recommendation would be, sure, we have good things that to say about Babywise, but always do your own research, and you don't always have to follow a program to the T, right? You could always take certain elements from different programs and plug it into to your own day and how your baby and what's best for your baby, right? One of the few things, and we'll talk about breastfeeding later, but one of the things that like we learned very quickly, right? They always say, or people like to say, sometimes they like to think like, oh, what's better, breastfeeding or formula? And the best baby is fed baby, right? So the best baby is happy baby. Whatever works for your baby is what is best for your baby, right? So take what we have. We hope to offer you something, but we really do invite you to take what we have and make it your own.
Yeah, so here we go. Some background on where we were before we got started with Babywise. So before we got started with Babywise, I would say we started around 6 or 8 weeks, something like that.
That sounds right.
And before that, I was breastfeeding, and then we would also so the first couple of days that he was born, I would say we were supplementing because he was at risk of jaundice. And then so we went in a couple of days, I think it was like maybe like a week after he was born, we went in to see a lactation consultant, and she had said something about not supplementing him anymore, or like we could start to wean him off supplementing, and I like took that and ran with it, and I was like, okay, we're just not gonna supplement anymore, which probably was not the best decision in hindsight. So a couple of weeks later we went in. He wasn't back at his birth weight yet, and he wasn't sleeping super great. He's always slept really great at night, I would say. Even from the get-go, he was always a great sleeper at night. But we went in, I think it was like his 6 or 8 week appointment. He still wasn't back at his birth weight. And so our doctor recommended that we start supplementing him again. So from that point on, even up till the time that that we stopped giving him breast milk, he was supplemented the whole time.
But like Derlin said, Jonah has been a really good sleeper at night. But the thing that we were experiencing at this time before Babywise was that Jonah wasn't sleeping at all during the day. And so we got this app to track his sleep so that we could see how long he sleeps. Because we had read somewhere, and in general, babies should be sleeping a lot of the time. Obviously, it helps them grow, all that stuff. And we found that Jonah was only sleeping pretty much at night, and his naps were pretty much non-existent. Maybe 15 minutes, and he would always wake up crying. And so that was one of my big concerns was with him napping. And so I would say all of these things kind of gave us enough of a push to look into something different and to just explore our options and to do our research. And that's how we got to Babywise. So one of the big things of Babywise is the cycle or the schedule or the routine. You can call it whatever you want.
I think routine is a good
word. The routine that Babywise promotes. And that is sleep, eat, play.
Wake.
That is sleep, eat, wake, right? So those three things, sleep, eat, wake, in that order. Babywise really promotes PDF, right? There is it talks about PDF or parent-directed feeding, right? So you'll hear a lot of, like we've said, there's a lot of things out there, and do what works for your baby. But what PDF means, parent-directed feeding, what that means is that the parents are creating the schedule and are dictating when the baby eats. Now, this sounds very harsh. It sounds very harsh. And some of the things that we'll talk about might sound harsh, but the thing is, the caveat is if you do those three things well, sleep, eat, wake, then it works like a charm. And I would say after we started supplementing, that was like the key that unlocked this routine for us. Now, we're not saying that you need to supplement your baby in order for this to work.
It just worked.
That's just what worked for us, and that's what worked for Derlin.
The book also emphasizes to always respond to hunger cues, because you're creating the routine for them, and if they're hungry, then you might have to break the routine. Of course, feed the hungry baby. You're gonna have to feed him when he's hungry. So.
And the last thing I want to say before we even go into the routine of sleep, eat, wake, is that Babywise is difficult because it requires you to read and know your baby, right? It really requires you to kind of identify what's going on in the situation and really trying to problem solve. It isn't as simple as, the baby's crying, let's just feed him, right? It isn't as simple as...
Which we were doing before we started Babywise.
It isn't as simple as, he's falling asleep when I'm eating. Okay, he wants to sleep now. It's not that simple. It really does require you to be, I would say, to really be intentional about those three things, and to, like I said, do those three things well. Now we are going to talk about the cycle. And for the last time, I want to talk about the 3 steps of the cycle. They are eat, wake, and sleep. From now on, it will just be referred to as the cycle, and you will just have to know the 3 steps. And last time, they are eat, wake, sleep. Eat, wake, sleep. And so this eat, wake, sleep cycle, or the cycle, lasts a certain amount of time. In other words, you have to do all of those things hopefully within a time frame, okay? And usually when it's a newborn, or at least when we started, the cycle lasted 2 to 3 hours. And so we'll kind of talk about the breakdown of those times and some things to look out for in the 3 steps of the cycle. The 3 steps are eat, wake, sleep.
Step is the eat cycle. So within the cycle, I would usually spend about an hour, like 30 minutes, I would say, to an hour feeding Jonah. And that was because he was just taking a really long time nursing, because he was basically a newborn still, and so he just took a long time nursing, which is totally normal. And it was during that time that we would really try to make sure that he was getting full feeding. So that was one of the big parts of that, is they would talk about quality is as important as the order of the activities. So we had to make sure that he was getting a good like quality feeding, full feeding, good quality wake time, and then good sleep. So with the eating, we would make sure that he stayed awake, which is really hard for a newborn to like stay awake while you're feeding him. And so I would do things like do skin to skin, which would help not only keeping him awake because it was kind of like cooler, but it would also help with milk supply because of the physical contact. We would also use wet washcloths and kind of like rub it on his back or on his feet and just kind of like play with him and kind of like rub it, like I would like massage his head a little bit just to kind of like keep him awake so that he would get in those full feedings.
Babywise really emphasizes that this is the time where you really need to have your baby get a full feeding. It's not the time for them to sleep. It's also not time to play. And that's one of the things that I may have been really hard on Derlin, but those were one of the things that I would always try and say and remind Derlin. You know, she might be feeding him and they might be like he might make a funny face or just generally make Derlin laugh, and Derlin might play with Jonah a little bit, and I would always say, Derlin, is this eating time or is this playing time?
No, you wouldn't tell me that. You would tell Jonah that.
Okay. Okay, maybe I tell Jonah, it's eeting time, not playing time. And
or it's eating time, not sleeping time too.
Or it's eating time or not sleeping time, right? And the thing is here is you need to do, in order to do this well, you have to feed them. You have to give them a full feeding, and yes, maybe they didn't get a great nap, but this is not the time to sleep. This is the time to eat, because the things with the steps is that they all work together, so that especially the eat and the wake is that if you have a good feeding and if you have a good awake time, they will have a good sleep. So to summarize the first step of the cycle, eat, you want to make sure that your baby gets a full feeding. If your baby falls asleep, some tricks we have is to get like a wet washcloth and rub it on his feet or his neck, his hands, whatever it is, to get him awake. And to make sure, because when they are awake, they are getting full feeding. They aren't just snacking. Next step to the cycle, the second step to the cycle is wake time.
Is we would play with Jonah, so we would just do like tummy time. Sometimes we would go on a walk, and we would just like, that was about it. We would just mostly do tummy time and walks, honestly. Yeah. And
this is a really important part of the cycle, because this is like, I mean, it's probably like one of the favorite parts of the cycle, because this is when you get to interact with your baby, right? And this is when you get to play with them. You get to go, on the ground with them and kind of show them the toys. And the big thing here is that you really want to stimulate them, and you really want to try and get them to engage with them, to engage with them, and to get them working in the sense, right? You want them to, because this time, not only is it helping them develop and learn, but it also is key to the last part or the last step, because it's getting them tired, right? You want to make sure that this part is that it's good and that you are being intentional, because like we said, like Babywise says, the quality is as important, if not more important, than the actual timing of the events of the cycle. And so what we would do, we would put him on the mat and show him like the little stuffed animals, and in general anything to engage him and to get him to learn more about the world around him. So the third step and a culmination of all of the hard work that you've done in the eat and wake parts of the cycle is sleep.
So sleep, I would say, is probably the hardest part. It probably is, yeah. It's probably the hardest part of the whole Babywise routine. So before we got started with Babywise, I was nursing Jonah to sleep both at nighttime and for his naps. And that's probably why he wasn't napping very great, is because I had low milk supply. And so, yeah, he just like wasn't napping super great. And so something that they really emphasize is not using sleep props. So sleep props include like nursing to sleep, rocking to sleep, pacifiers, different things like that. And I think that they go through what each of them are. But they really emphasize not being like dependent on something to fall asleep. And so the emphasis is to rock them until they're drowsy, and then you put them to sleep while they're drowsy. And of course, they also don't emphasize cry it out. So that was something that I was really, even to this day, I'm like, I wouldn't want Jonah to be crying for like more than 15 minutes. And so whenever we would put him down and he would start crying, we would walk out, and then we would give him like 10 to 15 minutes to cry before I went and got him, so that he knows that like, okay, like I'm not just gonna abandon you, like I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna come and get you and kind of soothe you. And then I would start that process again. So I would get him and rock him until he got drowsy, and then I would put him down again. And sometimes, especially at the very beginning, that was super frustrating because he wouldn't fall asleep sometimes. And other times he was like, oh, okay, this is fine. He would take a little while, and then maybe sometimes he would cry for like 5 minutes, 8 minutes, and then he eventually would go to sleep.
Now, I just want to add this note. Obviously, as baby grows, they go through developmental stages, and there definitely will be parts where baby is cluster feeding. So if you don't know what cluster feeding is, cluster feeding basically means is that they are, my best understanding of it is that they are just eating nonstop. They'll eat, and then maybe 30 minutes, an hour later, they will want to eat again. So Babywise does a great job of factoring that into the cycle and factoring that into as they grow. You need to put down your baby drowsy and allow them to learn how to fall asleep, and that requires you to, if they are crying, to give them the opportunity 10 to 15 minutes of crying, and whatever you're comfortable with.
I think the book suggests like 20 minutes, like up to 20 minutes, I think is what it said, but we always did like 10 to 15 minutes.
And going and getting your baby and starting the cycle over. Now, this, like I was saying, this was very difficult for Derlin and I, and I am sure that it is very difficult for all parents. I remember telling her, Derlin, this is an investment. It will pay off in the future. And he, as we've talked about in our last video, which we will link here, he sleeps great. He sleeps through the night. He rarely wakes up, and if he does, it's because something's going on.
Yeah.
I remember telling her, Derlin, this is an investment. It will pay off in the future. And he, as we've talked about in our last video, which we will link here, he sleeps great. He sleeps through the night. He rarely wakes up, and if he does, it's because something's going on.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you need to factor in with Babywise and with this step of sleep is that you can only put baby down so many times before the next cycle, right? So, for example, if Jonah if we would put him down for sleep and then he would cry, and we put him back up, pick him back up, and then put him down again, and he would cry, and then we pick him back up. Eventually, you'll have to get to the point where it is time to eat, right? That's just the cycle. Now, this is where, this is the thing that if you only take things to the, if you only do it by the book, or if you only, if you don't do your research thoroughly, you'll miss this part. Is that so? If it's time for him to wake again, because the 2 hours have gone by, then he'll eat, he will do some awake time, and then after the awake time, he will need to sleep. Now, so here's the key part. If you as the parent need to make a call on if baby is sleepy, if he or she is actually sleepy, or if they are now sleep deprived. So we do not want baby to be sleep deprived. Now, what this means is when baby is sleep deprived, we are open to the parents should consider the alternative of rocking them to sleep or having them sleep in your arms.
Yes, I remember that.
Because we need baby to sleep, right? We need baby to get their sleep, so that when they wake up, they feel refreshed. They're able to properly feed. They're able to properly do an awake time, and then the cycle goes back, right? So one of the first things that we did when we implemented Babywise was we tried to do the cycle and try to put him down to sleep, just like how we've been talking about it, is rocking him drowsy and then putting him down. But especially the first and second day, I remember I told Derlin, what we'll do is we will basically make up that sleep deprivation, remedy that sleep deprivation by allowing him to sleep in our arms at that part of the cycle, and then eventually weaning him off that.
Because then he'll get into like the routine of things.
Because he will get into the routine of things.
Moving forward with Babywise, so as he got older, I really just like turned to the Babywise book when I remembered that they had schedules in there for when they got older, and it was like it was just like based on weeks, and I would always reference it, but I always noticed that Jonah wasn't like on schedule with what the book said, which at times would stress me out. But it was like Jonah was doing fine, like he wasn't going by the book, but I was always listening to his sleep cues, his hunger cues, and things like that. And so even I was a part of this spring Babywise mamas group, and even the schedules that Jonah had wasn't always aligned to what everybody was doing on there. And I was totally fine with that, mostly totally fine with that, because I was listening to him and what he was doing. Even now, I'm like, should Jonah be going to one nap? And like, no, he shouldn't, because he's doing fine with 2 naps. Or there are days when he does take 1 nap. Like, I'm not like trying to force a certain schedule on him. I'm just doing what makes sense to us and like what he is telling me that he needs at that moment. Yeah.
So that is parent directed feeding. This is, I mean, that's parent directed, right? She's Derlin, we aren't going based on a schedule, so it's not schedule directed, right? We aren't just listening to what Jonah wants, right? Because there are definitely times where he is awake and he just wants to play, but he is cranky, right?
Yeah, I'm like, you need to go to sleep.
Yeah, so it's not baby directed, it's parent directed. So just a quick summary of the cycle. Again, the cycle consists of 3 steps: eat, wake, sleep. Eat, wake, sleep. So eat, you want to make sure that they get full feedings.
Bake and wake, we make sure that we try to give them a full, engaging, quality interaction time so that they're getting the energy out and
learning in the process.
Yeah, learning in the process.
And lastly, step 3, sleep. You want to make sure that you put them down drowsy, and that you give them the opportunity to learn how to sleep. And that is it for today's video, everyone. We hope that you learned something about Babywise. If you have any questions about Babywise, anything that we didn't cover about Babywise, the book is
we will link it down below.
We'll link it down below. You'll see that there are many chapters. We didn't talk about everything. We only talked about what really worked for us and what we found was most important of Babywise, but we would be more than happy to answer your questions about Babywise. If you liked this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button and make sure you subscribe down below. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so that you could get updated with our new content twice a week. We are getting a decent amount of views on our videos, but a lot of them are from people who aren't subscribed. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. Again, it would really help our channel out and really help us grow.
Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoy, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.